Hey everyone, it's Kyle. Azora Hype. The Iron Throne, the final episode of Game of Thrones, showcased the bittersweet ending for so many of our favorite characters, including Daenerys Targaryen, who was killed by Jon Snow. In this video, I want to focus on House Stark and the poetic endings we saw for Jon, Sansa, Arya, and Bran. So let's get hype and let's jump into the video. Over the last couple weeks, I discussed the idea in a few different videos on the channel that our remaining House Stark members would have to make some incredibly difficult decisions because of the impending war in King's Landing with Cersei, but also Daenerys Targaryen, who felt threatened by Jon's claim to the Iron Throne. I think a lot of people thought that if Jon were to kill Daenerys, he would be crowned King of Westeros because of who he really is. Aegon Targaryen, the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. But committing regicide during medieval times was considered to be the worst of all crimes. This ties us back to Robert's Rebellion, where Jaime Lannister earned his famed title of the Kingslayer, killing Dany's father in the same throne room, and ultimately where Daenerys met the same fate and was murdered by Jon to stop the possible future wars in his tracks. The story comes full circle for Daenerys, just like her father, in that she was betrayed by her hand in Tyrion, which is a big reason why Jon killed Daenerys, because Tyrion told him that his family would never be safe because of his claim, and also because they would support him as well. We saw this beautifully displayed in the scene where everyone is voting on a new ruler for Westeros, when Yara gets all pissed and Arya says she will cut Yara's throat if she continues to talk about her brother, Jon Snow, and Sansa says that thousands of Northmen are outside of the walls of King's Landing, willing to explain why harming Jon Snow is not in their interest. Now, if Daenerys really wanted to break the wheel, she wouldn't have stated that others don't get to choose like we saw in this scenario, and her stating that this isn't the end of the wars was the reason that Jon Snow murdered her. But Dany's death brings the story full circle, as it was a time for wolves in King's Landing. Jon was imprisoned like Ned was at the end of his journey, but in this scenario, this isn't about the fall of the Stark family, and it's not about enduring further tragedies. It's about the Starks coming full circle and using what they've learned on their journeys to come together as a pack. And after all, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. This is the bittersweet ending that we see in the Dream of Spring when we see Jon marching beyond the wall with the wildlings. It is bittersweet that Jon is sent to the north to the Night's Watch in exile, but once the Black Gate closes, he realizes he is amongst the people who understand him more than anyone, and accept him as one of their own. It's interesting because we see Dany's House of the Undying vision come to fruition, but the final part with her and Drogo and her beyond the wall could be symbolic in that her third and final betrayal was going to come at the hands of Jon Snow. Symbolically, perhaps her going through the Black Gate meant that Jon was the one to send her to her afterlife, and Jon was that gate for her. The final scene of the series is symbolic as the pack survives, but are all walking through new gates, new doors, while closing old ones. We see all of their stories come full circle, which is symbolic because in the hero's journey's mythic structure, which is the template which is used for all of the characters within A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, brings them to a point of rebirth. We're born, we live life, we die metaphorically by leaving the past behind, and also choose new paths and become reborn in new ways. We become reborn in new ways with the lessons we've learned on our journeys along the way. While the journey wasn't perfect over the final 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, the ending made sense for Jon, Arya, Sansa, and also Bran in ways that are deeply symbolic. Sansa Stark becoming the Queen of the North has ties to our own human history, and that her ending has a very strong connection to the coronation of Elizabeth I. This is beautifully displayed as Sansa defiantly wears her hair down, much like Elizabeth did, to signal her endured sexual abuse, but also her purity. Elizabeth was a survivor, and so is Sansa, who has learned from so many different people like Littlefinger and Cersei, and has finally become the queen of the Northern Independent and Sovereign Kingdom. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell, and long may she reign. And we also have Arya's ending, which was poetic as well, and inspired by Frodo's final journey to the Undying Lands as Arya sails west of Westeros past the westernmost point of the Lonely Light. Arya finally has her freedom and doesn't have to serve the god of death anymore. After all, Valor Dohairis means all men must serve, but Arya is no man. I also love the final moment with Jon and the rest of the family and her spreading out the map in the bowels of the ship. It mirrors Arya's ending of not only Season 4, but also what happened with Nymeria. Staying in Westeros for Arya, that's not me, and she still has her needle, the token of love from Jon, and the representation that she will always be Arya Stark of Winterfell. And I know many people are upset at Bran becoming king, Bran the Broken, but I can't help but feel like his final words to Jon also apply to all of the remaining members of House Stark. You were exactly where you were supposed to be. Bran is an unexpected choice to be king, but Jon wouldn't be happy in King's Landing, so getting sent beyond the wall, although it's bittersweet, he will find peace in these moments. And Bran has Samwell, Davos, Brienne, and Tyrion, and people around him who understand what it's like to not be perfect. And even though Sansa is on her own in the North, she will lead House Stark into the future, and House Stark will prosper, and Arya gets to go on her new journey, choosing her fate, choosing life instead of letting death control her journey. So while the ending of Game of Thrones wasn't perfect to me, it was satisfying, and although we didn't get as many episodes as we want, House Stark's story has come full circle. The pack survives. But what do you think about the ending? Were you satisfied? Did you think the endings for our remaining members of House Stark were satisfying and poetic? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and let's keep this discussion going. Also, feel free to leave a suggestion on what topics you would like to see next on the channel in the next videos. And if you want to see more Game of Thrones videos, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get updated for future videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Hype and love.